everyone. Looks like folks are coming in.
Hi all. Oh, good. Our numbers are growing. That's nice. Don't want to have a party and nobody comes.
Does that happen to you a lot, John?
I mean, no. No. Why? Why would you ask? My parties are the best.
So I've heard.
Yeah. No abandonment issues here.
No. Nope, you're not being triggered at all.
That's it. Oh, our soiree is growing. Yeah, this is definitely the biggest party I've had. We're at more than 4. Yeah, 21.
But it's exactly like every party you've attended since March
all
of
the
last
parties.
year.
Yeah. It's a lot like my parties of last
squares.
year.
Yep. Yep, just squares. All right, welcome everyone. We'll just give it another few seconds and see what happens. We're so glad you're here.
Yes.
All right, it looks like our numbers are holding pretty steady. So what do you think, John? Oh, look, as soon as I say that, a bunch more people jump in.
Put that out into the universe. I mean, people just keep coming to my parties, so I think it's just going to keep growing.
It's all about you. All about you.
Awesome. Same page. All right. Now our numbers are holding steady though, so probably ought to get started.
Great. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the Equal Access Book Club. This is the 3rd meeting, so we're very happy you're here. And the topic for today is the 3rd chapter of the book, Equal Access for Students with Disabilities, a guide for health science and professional education. And show and tell. It wouldn't be a book club without the book. So yeah, so we're glad you're here. Thanks for being here. I'm going to share my screen and go through some introductory slides. Yeah, so that should help. I think everybody can probably see that. So we are, oh, my slides aren't moving. Why aren't my slides moving? Interesting. There we go. All right. I don't know what the holdup was. Yes, we're talking about technical standards today. We're talking about chapter 3. So this is a chapter that is entirely new to the book from the last edition to this edition. So we're glad that so many people were interested in talking more about it today. So we'll just introduce ourselves briefly. My name is Elisa, and I worked until very recently at an all health science school. And before that, I worked at the University of California, San Francisco, which is also an all health science school. So I've got quite a bit of experience being in disability offices in health science institutions. And I just switched jobs and work at AHEAD now.
Hello, my name's Jon McGough. My pronouns he, him. I'm director of Disability Access Center at Western Washington University. And before that, I was at University of Washington working with their many health sciences programs, and yeah, do some consulting with another newly developed medical school as well. So glad to be here.
Great. So first, we want to thank all of the authors for all of the book chapters. John's name is on this list, and a lot of other names, some of whom are in our audience today. So thank you very much to everyone. And we also want to thank our sponsors. So that includes the coalition. It includes AHEAD. It includes designated interpreters who are doing our captioning today, and Springer Publishing, who published the book. So how are we going to engage today? There's a couple ways you can do that. One is if you use that raise hand button that is in Zoom, it will pop your name to the top of the list. We'll see you there, and then we'll call on you. If multiple people raise their hands, then we'll do some turn taking there. We can unmute you so you are just voice, or we can also let you turn your camera on. So we'll let you choose that and let us know when you start talking. You also, if you prefer, can type your comments into the chat or into the Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on those. John, did you have a preference whether people use chat or Q&A?
Well, I'm open to whatever. I'm just so excited for people to engage. Awesome. I like people.
All right, well, let's get to it then. So the first question for our book club today is, the federal guidance for Section 504 states that the term technical standards refers to all non-academic admissions criteria that are essential to participation in the program in question. Which programs at your institution require students to meet technical standards for admission, and how would you direct students and prospective students to find them at your campus? So while folks are thinking about that and working on finding that raise hand button, John, do you want to answer this one for your school?
Sure. So it's really varied by program. I haven't ever felt like I've seen a great example of a whole school that's entirely consistent in how they make students aware of these types of standards. But probably the most common theme is that after admission and within the first day of school or so, there's a hope that that this type of information is circulated. Some of my programs will have students sign it. Some longer programs provide it quarterly or annually rather. And most programs now, we've got websites that are publishing this information so that it's easy for prospective students to find. And that feels like is often the trick, is that prospective students struggle to find this information. It's so helpful for them. Oh, we've got our first brave soul willing to use the raise hand feature. Can we, should I unmute them? Do you want to do that?
Hello.
Hey,
Hi,
welcome. You're our first caller.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Love your leadership.
I was going to make the joke, but I knew you would do it.
Thank you.
Hi, gang. Marie from Rush University. Happy to be on. It's a good way to end the week with a group of like-minded people here.
Yes.
So here at Rush University, we have 4 colleges, and they all have technical standards for the programs within them. One of our colleges just underwent a review, and they will have those published up next week. And our students are all informed about technical standards upon admission. It's posted and published under each of our colleges in the admissions information. And when they are going through the admissions process, and even when they get an acceptance letter, it's in that information, that package as well. And then it's part of my process that I talk with the students who then approach my office. So we bombard them with it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Got it.
Solid strategy. Thank you.
What about at other schools? And I know that we're on a primarily health sciences focused webinar today, but technical standards are used in a lot of other non-health science programs. So any program from truck driving to student teaching might have technical standards. Music programs, there's all kinds of reasons why if it's some kind of non-academic admissions criteria that would be essential for participation in the program might play.
And I see somebody, Caitlin Martin, it looks like, put in the chat that they have PT, OT, PA, and pharmacy technical standards, and each program has them listed on their departmental sites. So
Got it.
thank you.
And I know a lot of schools have the disability office linked to those in one place so that incoming students with disabilities can immediately jump there more quickly too. But yeah, definitely having them on their websites is really important. Christine, looks like your hand is up.
Sorry, I didn't hit the unmute button before I started talking.
Happens to us all.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I know it's like a Zoom pitfall. I agree with Marie. That's a nice way to end the week. Hi, Marie. Haven't seen you in a long time. I just wanted to add to what Marie said. They're also in our handbook. So they're online. They're in a lot of places. They have to attest to them when they get there. They have to attest to them a couple more times throughout the med school program. But we also have them in our handbook. And everywhere that they're listed, there is a reference to the ability to get reasonable accommodations. And then the disability office is listed with the contact information.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful, especially that last thing that you said about having the disability office listed there so that students who aren't sure if they can meet the technical standards as they're applying can contact and find out what accommodations might be available that would allow them to participate so they know if they should even apply or not. I see in the Q&A that Carrie Hankin at Portland Community College noted that it depends on the department how they're shared, that it varies on her campus from department to department. Many of them share it and require a signature at the beginning of the year. Yeah, so I'm curious, maybe we can everybody can use your raise hand button and we won't call on you, but I'm curious, sort of a show of hands using that button. How many of you have at least one program that does require a signature on the technical standards, either at the beginning or annually or on admission? Let's see. John, are you able to count these?
Oh, it's
13. I see. Look, it counts it for us. So 13,
oh, that's good.
13 of you. So that's about a third, I'd say. So that's a fairly significant number. You can go ahead and put your hands down. Thanks for that. Yeah, so it seems like it's common, but not maybe every single program doing that. But that is one way to acknowledge it. I do, sometimes there is the tendency that, it could accidentally give the impression that students are being, like that students with disabilities are being singled out in some way when everybody has to sign those every year, or that they're, sort of being told, remember, you're different. So I think it's all about how we frame it, making sure that it's all about making sure that they know that there are resources available rather than making sure they know that they might not make this program if their disability gets in the way. Should we move on to the next question, John?
Let's do it.
Why don't you read the next one?
All righty.
Let me just keep trying to, there we go.
Cool. All right. Question 2. Students seeking admission to certain health science programs must meet the program's published technical standards. How can these technical standards be useful for students with and without disabilities, as well as useful within institutions? How can institutions ensure their technical standards are available to prospective as well as accepted students? And I was, oh, great.
Marie.
Yes.
And Phyllis. All right.
Hi, and please disregard my child having a meltdown in the background.
Marie, you should be able to talk.
I am.
Yep,
Can you hear?
can.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, just disregard the screaming 3-year-old. I think what's important about the technical standards and how they're useful for students with and without disabilities is it just shows what the school expects, plain and simple. This is what you're going to have to accomplish, and I'm going to mute myself now. While you're a student at our program, while you're going through it.
Yeah.
And no worries on the kids. Everyone's working at home. Everybody, don't even worry about that a bit.
Yes.
Phyllis, what can you add?
So, and I've got construction going on here, so if it gets too tough. This isn't really an answer to this question, I guess, I just realized. But I was really struck in the book about how technical standards, like one of the emphasis was on things like effective communication and professional conduct. And not so much on the things that we know exclude students, things like, can you lift 10 pounds? Can you, things that are direct, like in that way, if they're not really written well. So I think that in answer to your question, the technical standards can be useful when they address those types of things like effective communication and things that would be expected of all students. And I don't really see how that's a disability issue per se. So I'm sort of interested in hearing you connect it like with a disability services office, because I never really thought of it that way. Although they are really used in a lot of ways, a lot of students who read them and don't see themselves in there don't even apply to a program. So they can be sort of exclude students unknowingly. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. I think you're making a few great points. One, that poorly written technical standards can dissuade potentially qualified disabled students from attending. And I've definitely had experiences like that working with a program where a student who was a former EMT was pretty certain he couldn't apply to this program because it had a lifting requirement that he knew he couldn't meet any longer. And the program responded, no, we don't really need that. Never mind. So that was an example of a student. I'm glad he spoke up, but almost didn't apply because he thought he couldn't meet the standards. And I think the other piece that you're bringing up is another great point, that there is no other place to provide some of these soft skill expectations around technical standards. And so this is a great place to highlight those. And those are universal standards to all students and not a disability issue per se. So I think a couple of great points that you're making.
Yeah, and before we get to Cindy's question, I just want to note that Maria just wrote in the Q&A, at the same time you were saying the word soft skills, her comment came up saying it's the only place where the school's expectations for soft skills are. They serve as enforceable standards for ethics, interpersonal interactions, professional behavior expectations, and other non-academic competencies. And Terry looks like she's partway through her question, so I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Cindy, and maybe that'll give Terry a chance to finish hers.
I was just looking at the second part of the question. How can institutions ensure their technical standards are available? I think having it readily available on the website, meaning that there's only a couple clicks rather than going down a deep tunnel to find them. But also, I think talking with the admissions folks, and to see if they understand, or to help them to understand what technical standards are all about, as well as others in the program that prospective students might encounter, department heads. We gave a technical standards talk with faculty members so that they could understand what they are. So I think that those are some of the things that we can do to help prospective students understand what the technical standards are.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that part that you mentioned about working with faculty, meeting with faculty just to get them up to speed with what they are, I think that's critical. I think some of the later book club questions are going to talk more about interacting with programs and as we're looking at technical standards together. Terry, under communication technical standards at our institution, there are two statements that concern me. Quote, clear, efficient, and intelligible articulation of English language and legible, efficient, and intelligible written English language. She asks, so those are the two technical standards, and her question is, do these eliminate ASL? So I don't know, what do you think? Terry or anyone else want to talk through it? What are the, great. Terry, you're muted, I think.
There we go.
There you are.
Yeah, and to prepare for today's meeting I went and did a more detailed look at all of our technical standards. I'm fairly new in the position, and we have a number of different programs. And I was very surprised to find this in 3 of the programs. It felt like it was very limiting, and that someone who used American Sign Language or a different sign language may feel that they could not apply. Am I overthinking this?
I think it potentially. So looking at the way that it's written, when we're talking about intelligible articulation, that sounds like it's specifically requiring clear speech, which not just deaf individuals, but anyone with any kind of speaking disability may not be able to meet. And so it is entirely possible that someone who otherwise would be, a great candidate for the program reads that and says, well, I have a stutter, they're not going to let me in. Or I have a deaf accent, so they're not going to let me in. So that's potentially an issue. So Cindy offered in the comments a workaround that English could be written if voicing is not an option. Of course, we know there is a need for both face-to-face communication as well as written communication for a lot of programs. So yeah, John, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think articulation is an interesting word that doesn't necessarily imply a specific modality such as speech. I also think the important thing is that I hope in that document there's something to the effect of with or without accommodation, which would make a big difference. Because I think there could be ways with accommodation that articulation, as it says, could happen. So that's a firm, maybe it's an issue from me. Is that helpful?
Right. Yeah, and Cindy also offered the with or without accommodation around the same time you were saying it.
Oh,
so I'm going to let Terry,
excellent.
our question asker, follow up on that, and then we've got a couple other folks who are also interested in chiming in. So Terry, why don't you go first?
On the webpage, at the very bottom, very bottom, it does have the link to look at disability support services that are offered, and then from there you could get to a form to request accommodations or to set up a meeting with me. So it's there. I feel like it's too hidden, and I'm just wondering if I'm being overly critical.
Well, it never hurts to look at it with a critical eye and be concerned, and certainly working with the school about, if it's on their website, about moving that part up to the top. A lot of schools have it in the introduction part rather than at the bottom. And that's another way to just make the school more welcoming. There's no legal standard at this point that we're talking about. It's more a matter of what kind of culture do you want to be putting forward to prospective students, applicants. What do you want them to think about your school as they're reading your website for the first time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think how it's packaged would make a big difference in terms of maybe the unintended messaging that that technical standards sometimes get across, that can be a helpful way to, there can be a helpful transition from a conversation around technical standards to, can this be viewed as a tool to increase diversity and help us find qualified disabled applicants? Like, through that lens, I'm less concerned about the specific example of articulation and more, I love your idea of, is the bottom really the place to put this, as opposed to maybe leading with a diversity statement and a clear purpose around why this can be helpful, and it's not just intended to weed people out, which is how they often read.
Yeah, let's hear what Brian has to add to the conversation.
Okay, I think you can hear me now.
We
So
can.
I agree that the word articulate.
Oh, Brian, we lost you. You're muted.
Okay, am I better now? Hopefully I stay unmuted. So I think that there's a problem with the word articulation because it doesn't kind of fold in accommodation and other ways of communicating. And there are, hundreds, maybe thousands of very intelligent and well-prepared individuals who happen to be deaf and use ASL or alternate communication means. And there's actually a whole separate professional organization for those folks, the AMPHL. But I will take a bit of the contrarian view that I think if you change the word articulation to communication, it's probably appropriate, because a number of folks that we would see in our undergraduate experience don't have the ability to read and write English at the college level. And of course, people can gain that over time, but I do believe that there is a place to say you need to be able to communicate well, using the forms and standards and expectations of writing. And I think that that's even more important in graduate and medical education, right? You could be an amazing deaf nurse, but you still have to be able to chart well and write notes well. And depending on your level of certification, write scripts, dispense medications. And so communication is a part of that, even if that communication is supported by a transcriber or an ASL interpreter. So I guess that's kind of half on one side and half on the other.
For sure. And I think you're getting to a good point, which is that technical standards aren't meant to be a separate standard for students with disabilities as compared to the other students in the program. Everybody's got to meet the same standards. It's just a matter of whether accommodations can help the students with disabilities meet those. Yeah. Let me just go to the comments here from Carrie, who was concerned that written legible part of the technical standard seems like it might eliminate a student who uses speech to text or other assistive technology. She also suggested clearly communicate, like Brian just suggested, as a possible alternate way to express that. I would add that written could be typewritten. I don't think, I have seen technical standards that require handwriting, which would probably be problematic, but written could be potentially, include speech to text. So I guess it's all a matter of how you interpret these words. I mean, I interpreted articulate different than John did. So I think there is room for interpretation in all of these, the fun aspects of the English language, right? But thank you for those comments, because I think those are helpful.
And I really like the couple of folks who have chimed in with this really being about communication is maybe the broadest umbrella. And when I've been involved, I have preferred language like that in these types of things. I think there are some examples that are indefensibly bad, and at times I pick my battles, even though I'd maybe pick a different word here and there, so it's a whole other political process I'm sure we all find ourselves in navigating conversations on these standards.
Yeah, so Terry, your hand is still up. Did you have more to add? And then I see Phyllis's hand up as well. Her hand went down. Okay. Phyllis, what can you add to the conversation?
So I apologize. I just step away for just a little bit. So if somebody said this, then I'm sorry. But and John, what you were just saying, I mean, I would be really concerned about something that said clear speech like that in a technical standard. And I guess the other thing I'm wondering is, you said in the book, that you feel like technical standards should be reviewed often with somebody who knows about disability issues. Do you suggest that somebody from a disability services office meet to review technical standards with departments, or, like, how do you navigate that conversation like you just alluded to?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I too would have an issue with the word speech. So I just want to be clear, the word was articulate, not necessarily speech. So I think it's a little nuanced when it comes to navigating these conversations. I found myself at times trying to get invited to the cool kids table, which again, maybe just a perennial issue I've had, I don't know, but to help make clear where the value added is in having someone from disability services or ADA compliance in these conversations. Sometimes that's been after a really difficult issue where a department is really reevaluating maybe what exactly they're looking for in students. Sometimes it's the language of risk management and compliance that is helpful to these conversations. And sometimes it's the language of, can we reach a more diverse audience and recruit more diverse student body by making improvements to these key documents. So I think it's all about finding the love language of the administrators who control these processes, because they often come up in pretty regular intervals with accreditation. So it's about timing and love language is maybe how I'd summarize ways I've tried to get a seat at some of these tables. Other folks, have anybody had strategies where how they score an invite to these kind of things?
Marie.
Hello again, Marie here from Rush. I think because I'm in a unique position, we had a big overhaul at our university in 2017 of all three of the four programs. And it was great because I got to centrally be a part of like organizing the calls and the meetings and kind of just putting it out there and establishing that I don't own them, but I am going to be a part of this process. And I think every time I get to speak with faculty, I try, annually, when they have the start of the term or start of the academic year get together, meetings, to be able to come in and say, don't forget, each year you need to, take a couple minutes from one of your faculty meetings and review your technical standards. They're not lengthy. It's just in telling them, take a few people, and I've even recommended grab someone from a different health science program, have some fresh eyes look at this and see maybe they can learn from you or you miss something, because how many times do we read something over and over again and then just completely miss a glaring grammar edit or something like that. So that's where I tell them the value of having outsiders from your program read it, that we're still within the institution, is we're on the same page here. It's great to get that feedback. Because we have a template at our institution, and it's great that now faculty, it's a no-brainer. It's been so nice. So it's not so much of it as an invitation, it's that collaboration is now established that, yeah, I don't own them. My office doesn't own them. That's the program, that's the colleges, but we're a team doing this together.
Yeah, and I see a couple of hands, and I'll just add that Brian added in the chat, offering to serve on academic support committees and accreditation reviews has helped them get a seat at the table. So, and I can say from my personal experience that I've done things like get the provost on board, or the dean of the School of Nursing, who then, you know, tells all the different nursing programs that they need to review them. So if you can find someone high up who's saying, yeah, it's everybody needs to do this every 3 years or whatever, then it's not just you cajoling and asking for a favor from them, but it's actually something that they have to do. So let's move over. Catherine.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kathy, and I'm actually from Johns Hopkins, and I'm fairly new to Hopkins, so had the opportunity to look
Welcome.
medical school at sort of what we had actually, you know, in place as technical standards. And we did engage like a fairly wide group of people and actually asked for both their suggestions and for them to look at other programs. So people brought ideas. I think Rush was one of the schools that we looked at closely. And we also brought all the technical standards from the book, which was really helpful. And in the end, they agreed to almost like the ideal that was recommended in your book. We haven't finished and published the new standards, so I guess there could be unanticipated pushback. So I'm going to be kind of cautious there. But we made some great progress because I think the way that the standards came out, everybody was really pretty comfortable with how it struck that good balance between being really clear about what was actually required, which I think our prior standards had failed to do, and they could see that. And also making sure that we were very equitable in how we were sort of stating these things, that we weren't trying to sort of pinpoint or direct this at a particular group, which the prior standards had kind of called out and we were able to point out. So I felt like this book was a really great tool for us to bring to them because it made the process easy. And, you know, there's still some pieces that we're negotiating, but I feel like we've come so far with what we've done already. I was like pleasantly surprised. So it just reminded me that if we come to them with tools that are useful and are open to everyone's input, that in the end, a lot of times doing a lot of the work for the process is really helpful to moving it forward, right? Like we made it easy for them to kind of come to agreement. And I do think it was largely because of all the work that was sort of done for us. So thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that you were able to leverage that. And I'll add that often pointing to other schools. And so you mentioned looking at Rush's when you were working at Johns Hopkins on yours, and then soon other people will be able to look at both Rush and Johns Hopkins. And there's other schools too that are that have more progressive technical standards. And so once there's a number of other schools that you can point to, then your school may be more comfortable taking those steps in a way that they weren't when they thought they were sort of the first ones to be making those kinds of changes. So that's a nice way to show that this is now becoming the norm, and they don't feel like they're sticking their neck out quite so much. Caitlin.
Hi.
Hi.
So I am from U Sciences, and we asked Dr. Meeks to come in and do a consultation with us. So she did a presentation on tech standards, and after that presentation, the deans of our 3 different schools came to me and asked if I could help them streamline their tech standards. So basically, we ended up taking every single program, all 5 of them, and finding common ground between all of them. So like they all had a communication section, they all had professionalism, they all had behavior, academic. So I didn't have to write 5 different programs technical standards. We just had one, and then we have program specific ones for anything that didn't fit into the general standards. But it actually worked out really well because everybody it's currently in production by going to the general counsel to review it. But the idea is that it would all be universally accessible, and we wouldn't have to worry about each individual program updating theirs.
Totally. Never underestimate the power of getting somebody else to say the things you've been saying sometimes is quite the truism, for sure.
Yeah. Bringing someone into your campus to say the things sometimes gets more attention than even though you're saying the exact same thing. Right. You're too familiar.
Yeah.
and standardizing them among programs or having some kind of template that all the programs can then work from. It feels less daunting to the program sometimes. That's what I did when I was working at Samuel Merritt. Like, here's a starting place. You can change this, you can modify it, but here's at least some place to start. And they were often just like, okay, whatever you said, we'll just like plug in the name of our program and call it done. You know, they just want to move on with the other work that they've got on their plate.
Yeah.
So Phyllis wrote in the Q&A, she really likes the idea of framing it as a diversity and equity issue. And then that's a good reason why it needs to be reviewed more regularly. And I think, you know, that's a great hook. That's a great way to frame it. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So we have one question that I'm a little hesitant to get into just because it's a little bit aside of technical standards themselves, which the question is about who gets the last say in terms of what is a reasonable accommodation to meet a technical standard when faculty and the disability office staff disagree. So that's much more of a kind of separate question. John, do you, I mean, I think there is no set there, you know, last say. I think it's all about, you know, working together and trying to get to the reasonable agreed upon solution and keeping the student involved. That does feel like a pretty large discussion that will potentially sideline the rest of our
it's a fantastic question, and it doesn't have an easy answer. I see one reply down here. Christine wrote, legal at the institution. Like, yeah, there have definitely been situations where, you know, I show my work and my engagement with the student and thoughts, and other people show theirs, and there's probably some decision maker who's holding the bag and is ultimately responsible. But those situations are tough. And a lack of thorough answer is really about, there's a lot there. And I think good questions to be asked.
Yeah, certainly letting the legal department be the referee, if you're lucky enough to be at an institution big enough to have one of those, is one potential solution. So moving on to our third question, what role do accommodations play in supporting a disabled student's ability to demonstrate a skill that is required by the technical standards? Does anyone have any examples of a time when they had a student who couldn't meet the technical standards until they used an accommodation and then were able to meet them? Or John? Put you on the spot.
Sure. Well, if that's how we're gonna roll, there have been times where we purchased, visual stethoscopes. I've definitely had a few of those situations where we needed to purchase additional equipment so that the student could, meet a standard like detect a heartbeat or something like that. Do you have examples, Elisa?
I don't know, but Dina or Lisa might. Dina or Dina, tell me if I mispronounced your name.
Hello, I'm Dina.
Hi.
Hi, and I'm at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And we too, we have purchased stethoscopes for students with hearing disabilities, whether they be in the nursing program or the medical program, both programs. And we also have had some students in nursing who have difficulty with walking and standing at times. So we've given them accommodations. A sturdy cart has really helped in terms of, being steady on their feet and walking in the hallways and helping patients and carrying, liquids or papers. Sometimes it's little things like being able to sit to do an examination. They can still perform the examination, but it's easier for them to sit when they do that. So there are often a lot of relatively minor accommodations to help students meet the technical standards in a nursing or medical setting.
Those are some great examples. Yeah,
Great
Lisa, do you want to
examples.
add some?
I'm sorry?
I was asking Lisa if she wanted to add more. She was the other person who had her hand up.
Yes, I was waiting for the unmute button, sorry.
Sorry, my bad.
Well, some that have already been mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm from the University of Florida. And things that have already been repeated that I can confirm as well here in the nursing program and another, and in medical school, a kind of walking, taking a break, not able to stand for long periods of time. One student does not have strength or ability in their left hand, which is their dominant, which is, let's see, the right hand is their dominant hand. It was injured, and so they're learning how to suture this semester before going out on rotations. We've purchased specialized stethoscopes for vision, at low vision, as well as deaf, hard of hearing. And also for a deaf, hard of hearing pharmacy student, we've purchased a Captel phone.
Interesting. Yeah, so a couple of other accommodations that have been used before got added to the chat. So Maria Keller wrote, allowing students to sit when they're in an observational role in a surgical rotation. Surgeries can be very long, and standing for a long time can be difficult for some students, but allowing them to sit when they're just observing. And then another, the student being allowed to make up clinical hours the following term in a radiography program. Yeah, and I think that that flexibility with scheduling and letting students move pieces around when it's possible. I know not all of our programs are structured to allow that, but when it is allowable, it can make all the difference for keeping the student in school, for sure. Does anyone else want to add anything? To move on. So question 4, we move all of the 10 boxes off of it, or John can read it if he can see it better.
Yeah, I've only got one last box to move. Here we go. So discuss some of the recent legal cases addressing deaf and blind students meeting technical standards in health science programs. What types of accommodations were in place or were ordered by the court to be put in place to allow these students to meet the programs or institutions' technical standards and participate in the program?
Cindy.
There was the case of the chiropractor, the blind chiropractor who couldn't read the x-rays. And the school said that that was a technical standard that had to be met. But they were able to show, the student was able to show that, in fact, many chiropractors don't read their own x-rays. They have services that do that.
Do you recall what the, and you may not, and that's okay, what the accommodation was that the student was requesting in that case?
I don't.
I think that it was an intermediary, essentially someone to describe the x-ray so that the student could then interpret the findings from it. And intermediaries are somewhat controversial, but certainly being used more and more. So that would be an intermediary for a vision issue. I mean, certainly sign language interpreters are an intermediary if we're being technical about it. So that's a long-standing intermediary that is serving the function, using a second human to serve a function for a student. And then there are a few medical schools that now have started using intermediaries for physical tasks, to do some hands-on things that a student is physically unable to do, knows how to do, understands the processes of, can easily pass tests about, but can't physically demonstrate themselves due to a disability. Is there anyone here who has successfully used intermediaries on your campus? I think we can all agree we know what a sign language interpreter looks like as an intermediary, but has anybody used any other kind of intermediaries in any of your programs? Brian?
We have used intermediaries in the undergraduate level with lab sciences, where a student wouldn't physically have been able to independently perform an experiment, but they could guide someone to do their part either individually or as part of a team.
Cool.
Great example.
Alicia?
There we go. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah, hi.
Hi,
Sorry.
yes.
I wanted to speak up earlier. I'm the token sign language interpreter here in this group. But I just wanted to share that probably as of up to date, I'm guessing here, estimated about probably 4 or 5 legal cases that have come up with deaf and hard of hearing medical students, and the majority of those have gone on to have intermediaries like designated interpreters or captioners with them. And the majority that I've seen, you know, once the case has been won and the interpreter has been put on site, it has been successful in all the cases that I have seen. The usual concerns are patient safety and clinical timing, but those, once they place the interpreter and the deaf student there on site, they quickly see that those concerns are really not valid. And so in most cases, those have been very successful.
Yeah, last 5 years have been pretty awesome in that regard, for sure.
And it's not that it's a
new,
it's not that it's a new thing. I mean, I had a fellow student when I was in college who started med school in 1991 with 2 full-time interpreters. He was profoundly deaf. So it's not, you know, having ASL interpreters in a medical school is not a new thing, but it's good that the courts have finally caught up to that, for sure.
I think the other part that I want to add is part of the success of that is the environment that creates the inclusion model. Because if the interpreter and the deaf student, which are kind of tied together, if you will, if they are isolated, sometimes people with the best intentions make it the worst situations where they might take the deaf student and put them in a solo group, you know, instead of with all their peers. And I think, well, this will be the best way to handle this. And in fact, it's very isolating and limiting their education, but really just including both the interpreter and the deaf student, you know, within the whole group, making it equally accessible is really the best approach.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm seeing the question about the best place to find those cases in terms of, and I'm trying to remember in the book if where the easiest place to see some of those.
John.
Yeah. Is that? Oh, I'm only on chapter 3.
So
I was just teeing up a nice question for you there, Elisa. There you go.
Yes. Yeah. So the cases that everybody's referencing are referenced there. You can Google. You can type the name of the case into Google if Cindy's question was to actually find the actual case to read it. which may have been what she was really asking. It's pretty, these cases are easily Googleable. You don't need to have any special database or access to anything to be able to bring them up. Just type in the full name of the case, and you'll probably get 4 or 5 hits that are the full text of the case. You just want to make sure you're reading the most recent one. Brian put in the chat, AHEAD and OCR have a case law reading room. They do. So if for those of you who are members of AHEAD, AHEAD has an access, has a research room that you can look at on their website, and OCR has their own separate one that would not include legal cases, that would just include OCR letters. So most of the cases that we were talking about were actually court cases, so those would not be in the OCR reading room, but they would be, like I said, pretty easy to find on Google.
And as I'm familiarizing myself with the index, I see that the cases are italicized. So these half dozen cases that come to mind are pretty easy to find in looking through the index. I'm learning.
Yeah, so if you wanted to, if you weren't sure what the name of the case was, you can find it
Exactly.
in the index. Just scanning for things that are in italics will be a shortcut to finding that. Yeah, so, and Cindy asked if those were cases about interpreting sounds, specifically like heart, lung, and GI sounds. And so those were they were cases about individuals who don't have full hearing. And so that I think would be included in those, not hearing heart and lung sounds and things like that. Yeah, so, and Brian asked if it was going back to the blind chiropractic student, if it was about reading x-rays being an essential requirement. And yeah, so essential requirement technical standards, that was, yeah, definitely part of the case.
Yeah.
So
that was Palmer.
John, we are just about out of time, unfortunately. So I don't think we're going to get to any more.
Not possible.
But I'm not mad about it at all, because I think that this was such a robust discussion. I didn't want to cut it off. I thought, you know, we were having such good input from everybody about how things are going at your schools and what you're doing, that it was really important to just keep the conversation going. So if you want to keep talking about these things, there are certainly, you all see each other's names in the participant list. So I encourage you to reach out to other folks that you may know, or maybe only know their name or don't know at all, and see if anybody's interested. Use the chat right now, if you like, in continuing the conversation and doing your own separate book club to get to the rest of the questions, or just to have other folks to be able to reach out to if you have a question at your school, to see if any other school has done that. So, and certainly the listservs, both the coalitions and AHEAD's listservs are also great for that. So we're really glad that you're here. Thank you. Oh, okay. So folks are already typing their emails in there. So Rana and some others. So if anybody's interested in grabbing her email address there before you hop off, she would definitely be interested in continuing this conversation. And I bet she's not the only one. There's Brian. So yeah, lots of folks. I'm really excited to hear that, because we really want this to be a connection point for everyone out there to be able to reach out to one another and use each other. Oh, so you don't see names in the participant list. Somebody let me know. So in that case, that's okay. I apologize. I didn't realize that when I said it, but yeah, go ahead and type your name and your email address into the chat. And yeah, grab it.
And the symposium is a great place to meet people as well. And do we have a slide on the?
We do. Thank you for that reminder. Look at that. So the coalition's virtual symposium, virtual seminar is going to be held in just a couple of weeks. So that's another great place. If you haven't already registered, here's the email address to do that. There's going to be lots more conversations about technical standards and lots of other health science accommodations and issues that come up for all of us in our work. So I hope that we'll get to see some of you all there virtually as well.
Yes. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. It was a wonderful discussion. Have a fantastic Friday. It's Friday.
Woohoo. All right. Here's the book club website if you want to sign up for any future meetings, and there will be another one next month, and we hope to see you there. Take good care, everyone.
More to come.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.